Hello, everyone. Welcome to Real Guitar Live. I'm Thomas Michaud, and I'm ready to answer as many of your questions as you can deliver to me in the next hour or so. Let's start with the pre-submitted questions, and then I will go over to the chat and see if I can answer any related questions. And please, anytime, add something into the chat. If you could please add the word question before. There's a bunch of comments, and I can't quickly sort out between questions and comments. So I'll be looking for the word question. Let's start with the first one. This is from Arthur. Bar chords, no problem with the bar itself. Everything falls apart when I add other fingers. Would it help to start with the bar and one finger and then add more, or is there a better approach? Great question. And first of all, I want to say, Arthur, you're on the right track, and you're not alone. Believe me, a lot of people have a problem with bar chords. The bar chord itself is playing the bar is one issue, and of course then adding the other fingers, yes, adds a whole separate complication. What you're describing would work, and I think it's a very valid approach. So it sounds like what you're saying is you want to add the bar and then just add maybe, let's see, I'm making the bar chord one finger and then practice that for a while and then add maybe a second finger. I'm guessing, I'm not sure that that's the right order. Yes, you can do that. That said, you have access to the course Bar Chords for Everyone in my Real Guitar Success membership. In that course, I break down bars, same idea, but in a different order. And you're welcome to, if you haven't already, just follow the step-by-step course. One video at a time. It'll give you things to practice on different aspects of the bar. I don't remember the exact order, but I start with playing power chords. So just learning not only how to get the fingers in the right place, but also some of the musical theory aspects of playing bar chords, like how to name the chords up and down the neck. Then I add just the fingers and make chords with the fingers, songs and exercises, so you get to practice it. And that's the key, of course, is working it so little by little you can get comfortable with making the bar chord. I do separate exercises for the bar itself, and then little by little put them together. If you haven't done that, that's the way to go. If you've done that, you might want to try just a review, starting from the beginning. Bar chords are hard, and you're perfectly in a legitimate place to just do it again and review, maybe twice. You can combine the two approaches. That's perfectly fine also, if that works for you. Try following the course and then doing what you're suggesting too, and working the two together. Keep at it. You're really on the right track. Just going to take some persistence. Okay, next question. Do we have a next? Of course. This is from Diane. Diane asks, what is the caged system? So this is kind of an ironic question. This morning, I got up early and just finished recording videos for my Real Guitar Success membership for June. And one series is on the cage system. So, and then I flip to my computer and I get this question. Cage system is an acronym for CAGED. And it's a way to look at the guitar neck and see the chords across the guitar neck. So one way to think of it is kind of like a map. The CAGED stands for a chord, C chord. It also stands for a chord shape, and that's the most critical part. So you can play the C shape, which is now a C chord, but you can play it in different parts of the neck. Now I've moved it up 2 frets. It's now a D chord, but it's still the C shape. And that's the hardest part with cage, is people distinguishing shape from the actual chord itself. Of course, if I were to play a C here, I'd have to do a bar, and there's whole other aspects of how to form the chords. I did a lesson on using what I call baby chords, or just 3-note chords. And so it's just a part of this full chord here. C, A, G, E, and D. It's really helpful for beginners because it makes the fretboard feel less mysterious and more like a map. And you get to kind of see not only how chords connect, but you can use them with scales and arpeggios to better feel like you have control over where to play in the guitar neck. And of course, it's one of these things that you work at little by little, and it gets easier and easier as you progress. So that's a brief explanation of I have lessons in Real Guitar Success on more details, but the lesson in June will specifically focus on using these partial baby chords or triads in the cage system. Let's see. So here's an interesting question. There's a fingerstyle song I'm trying to memorize, and I'm having difficulty. Do you have any suggestions? So let me think of where to start. The biggest concept with learning that I found helpful is being willing and able to break things down into little pieces, work on them, and then build them back up. So for an example, I have to pick something. I'll pick this. So that's part of a song. And I'm just learning that. I would probably start with just this first measure. And practice that until... And then the second measure. I have to figure out where I'm at. And then practice that. I'm having a little hard time remembering this. Then put them together, and so on. And I would spend each practice session just, 3 to 5 minutes on one aspect, and then work on something else. And then come back and work on either that same aspect or go a little further. And do that for 2 to 3 times. In other words, I wouldn't try to just stay focused on that one thing over and over and over. You tend to memorize things better if you space them out even a little bit with something else. Now, part of what happens is when you come back to it, you kind of have to remember where you were at, and it takes a little extra work. It's that little extra work that helps it imprint in your mind better. So it's not bad. It's actually what's working in your favor, a little extra effort. And so I practice maybe this first 2 parts, and then I go on to play maybe some scales. I'm working on the scale 3 to 5 minutes on, then come back to this. And so on. Do that every day. You don't have to practice the same thing every day, by the way, but that's one approach. You could practice this on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and then keep progressing until you get through the whole song. Then when you play the whole song, figure out where the challenges are that you're still having a problem with, and then narrow in and focus on those, and then add them back into the whole song. But I should say, to preface, I would probably start by just trying to roughly play through the whole song to get a feel for where the problems are, then break it down little step by step. Then when I can play the whole song at a slow tempo, go back and figure out what's holding me back from playing it a little faster and smoother. Work on those parts, put them back into the whole piece, and keep that process going over and over and over. And little by little, the song will progress. That's a general template for working on guitar in general, but it works particularly well with fingerstyle songs or songs that you can see the very distinct parts. Do you have experience with a guitalele? And this is from Shulamit. She says she's discovered it's kind of like, it's about the size of a ukulele, but it's meant to be tuned like a guitar, just higher in pitch. It's used as a travel guitar, and it can also be used for children because it's smaller. I have seen one. We've actually had them in my store. People buy them. They're popular. But but I haven't actually played one. I shouldn't say that. I did pick it up years ago and play it, and I play it just like a guitar, but it was higher in pitch. It was tuned up. So like this, tuned up like 4 notes. So it sounds more in the range of a ukulele. I guess you can tune it like a ukulele too, and Shulamit thinks the same thing. Now, I don't honestly know more than that. I just don't have personal experience with it. But I will say they're popular. What is your opinion, this is from Shulamit also, of the artificial intelligent music programs such as Suno? She says that she's written many songs, and she's went ahead and used Suno to take 100 of her original compositions, and the Suno created the songs, and she's posted them on YouTube. And I'd listened to just one of the songs, and it sounded great to me. I don't have experience with Suno. Other than when I read this question, I went quickly and online and figured out what it was, and then listened to one of her songs to see what you could do with it. But honestly, I don't know any more than that. But what she's asking also is, what's my opinion on this whole idea? And as both a experienced professional musician, composer, and owner of a music store and school, my ideas about AI is, this is sort of my philosophy in life in general. There are things I can do something about, and there are things I cannot do something about. And it's very important to me to figure out what those are, what I can do something about and what I can't, and to put more of my energy on things I can do something about. Now, I say that to mean AI is here, it's not going away, and if I hated it, that's not going to change anything. If I spend my time and energy saying, no, this is not right, it's not going to change. And that's not where I want to put my time and energy. So I don't even go there. I think, lightly, well, this is interesting. I doubt it's going to take the place of people creating music any more than it'll take the place of people writing their own stories. But it's definitely going to have a big impact, I can say that. And it's definitely having a big impact on a variety of, not just art, but things in general in our life. And it's, I'm pretty sure 10 years from now, it's going to be a ubiquitous part of our lives. That said, I'm looking for places I can use it and enjoy it, and places it doesn't fit, let it go and don't stress over it. And again, that's my opinion. I really feel strongly about focusing on things I can do something about, and not worrying and stressing and putting my energy and focus on things I can't do something about. Now, deciding what that is some of the hardest parts. And there's certainly things I can have influence over, but not necessarily control. And of course, that's something I'm constantly learning and learning more about, and hopefully getting wiser about. But I'm not always positive about that either. Next question. How often, or how do you know when to change your guitar strings? When I change my guitar strings, it's often when I listen to my guitar and it's lost its vibrancy, its brilliance. It's a little different from steel strings to nylon strings. Steel strings seem to lose it sooner than nylon strings. I'm not positive about that. I have a lot of nylon string guitars. So if one is not sounding great, I often just go to the next one. I would say in general, when I was playing, doing concerts, I would often change strings once a week. When I was playing 3 and 4 times a week, because I want that clean, clear sound when I'm playing for other people. On my own, in my own studio, I change strings about every 6 months, really. And I think most students, 6 months to a year is fine. The thing is, you don't often notice that the strings are changing because it's little by little. So it helps that I have other guitars I can compare, but you probably, more often than you think, you need to change them. You probably find out your guitar will sound a lot better than you thought it would when you change strings. And one thing I'll point out is that if you learn to change strings and you change them, the more you do it, the easier it gets. It seems like a real hassle the first, 3, 4 times. It gets easier. After a handful of times, really, it gets to be almost a no-brainer. Just keep strings. Keep several sets of strings in your house. Don't wait until you bust a string and then run out and have to go buy strings. And depending on when you buy them, you might have to wait 3, 4 days, a week. Just have at least 2 or 3 sets of strings. So if you bust one, you can pull from one. Or if you want to change strings, you can change it. And then you got time to go buy another pack. I would say on the metal strings tend to die quicker than the single strings. But I still change all the strings at once. It's just not that hard. It's not that expensive, really, to have a good sounding guitar. The better your guitar, the more you'll notice it, by the way, also. This is because the better guitars tend to show off the high end, and that's where you'll lose it with strings that have been on a guitar for a long time. Hope that helps. When you change strings, you'll see the difference from your old strings, and you'll start to remember when that sound is coming back and know it's time to change strings. Larry asked, let me make sure I didn't miss any questions here. Okay, next. Larry is asking, he writes music, and he's trying to use the circle of fifths. He says conform to the circle of fifths. And how do I know if I stayed within the rules, if I play some exotic chords? What he calls exotic chords are chords like A minor 7, D sus, A minor 6, F sharp sus, flat 9. Okay. I use those because they sound good together. Yet because of their non-standard chord formations, I don't know if I followed the rules of the circle of fifths. Could you explain how to use the circle of fifths with oddball chords, is what he calls them? Okay, so first of all, I don't follow rules to compose songs like that. So I take that with a grain of salt, whatever I say. I don't either follow the rules, and I'm not really wanting to follow the rules. So it's both that I don't really know all the rules that you're talking about, and I'm not really, I don't want to conform to rules. I'm going to go for what sounds good. And I know what sounds good is influenced by what I've heard and what I've done before. But that's my guideline. If it sounds good, it is good. That said, the circle of fifths, what he's talking about is chords going in a cycle from C to C, D, E, F, G as a fifth, G, A, B, C, D, and so on. Circle of fifths only deals with minor and major chords. Extended chords just fall into the minor or major. So, for example, it's really simple this way. If you have a C chord, let's say, what did you say? Let's say a C7 sharp 9. Or just take a simple C major 7, extended chord. That's an extension. It's not an odd, well, you can call it anything, but an accurate term for these chords are extended. What that means is you have a basic C chord, then if you add things to it like a major 7th or a sharp 5 or anything like that, it's just extending the chord. So this is a C major 7. That's an extension of the C chord. It adds a major 7 to it. As far as the circle of fifths goes, it's still just a C chord. Simple. If it's a C7 sharp 9, it's still just a C chord as far as the circle of fifths goes. If it's a C minor 7, now it's considered a C minor chord. Did you get that? There's only major and minor chords in the circle of fifths, and everything else falls into that category. A minor 6 is an A minor chord in the circle of fifths. F sharp sus flat 9 is just an F sharp chord. If it was F minor flat 9, it would be an F minor chord and so on, or F sharp minor if it was F sharp minor chord. So that's pretty simple. That's straight ahead. So you don't have to worry about that, Larry. I think that's all I can say about that. I'd be curious if other people have other comments, or if any, Larry, if you want to explain more what you mean by following the rules, or what kind of rules that you're trying to follow to use the circle of fifths to write songs. I'd be curious to hear that, and I might even have more to say about it if I understood exactly what you meant by following the rules. Okay, I'm going to go over now to the submitted questions. Again, if you didn't hear me in the beginning, if you could start with the word question and then add your question. That way I can see it separate from the comments. Mary asked, do you have any guitar tabs in Real Guitar Success in the library to practice different scales up the guitar neck? I will say no. I do, but they're not in the library. They are built into the lessons, the guitar sessions each month. So I don't categorize it so that you can just learn one scale after the other. And that's how I want to teach it. I want to teach the scales in context to a song, exercises, and in a way that we're going to practically use them, not just work on scales in any kind of order randomly. Not that that's bad. That's just not the way I do things. And I may make a library. I'm not sure about that. If I got enough requests, I probably would. With the preface, just practicing scales in order is not necessarily the best way to do that. If you're practicing scales as a warm-up or as part of your practice sessions, which I recommend, I would just practice a scale that you're going to be using for the song or whatever else you're going to be practicing. And practicing it in a way, either practicing the scale straight up and down in different areas of the neck, but also practicing in different ways, like in intervals and skips and things, because that's more likely how you're going to be using it in songs. Next question. Question. Can you show and explain how to add small solos and riffs in the middle of normal chords? So for when just one person playing guitar and wanting to solo and play the basic chords. Okay, Adam, I'm going to kind of be guessing a little of what you mean here. But let's say I'm playing... and I want to add some single notes, riffs in the middle of that. My first go-to might be some bass. Because it sounds really good, especially if you're playing and doing some kind of singing. And even but instrumentals, I think bass notes are kind of an easy win, bass riffs. And a lot of the bass riffs I use are kind of like walk up or walk down. In other words, part of a scale going to the next chord. Landing on the next chord. Now, the next go-to might be some little melody riffs, and I would draw them probably from the scale of the song. So this is we'll say this song's in the key of G. So I might do something like this. I don't do that a lot because it seems kind of interrupting. But if you're playing by yourself, yeah, that makes sense. That's something I would add, if I had two guitar players, I'd be adding some little melody lines while the other one was playing some chords in between. And if you're singing along, you do want to be careful. One of the advantages, I think, of playing by yourself is when you're singing, you don't want to be doing that. But if you have two guitar players, sometimes the other guitar player doesn't realize that their melody and the stuff is actually cluttering up your vocal part, and you don't want to do that. So it's just something to keep in mind. It doesn't mean you can't play single lines, especially between chords, but you want to keep in mind how it fits with the rest of the tune. Early bird gets the worm or something. Okay. Thomas, has has a beginning course on Spanish guitar, 6-step with total of 69 lessons, all geared towards beginners. In case you come back to see the chat. First of all, I'm seeing the chat. I haven't left. This is Eileen. I don't understand your question. Maybe you could try asking another way. I would love to answer. But Thomas has a beginning course. Oh, I see. You're answering somebody's question. Thank you, Eileen. I really appreciate it. Got it. That makes sense. That's what I get for trying to read a question without the word question in front. I couldn't tell. It's actually a comment. It's okay. I'm going on. Question. Why is it important to learn guitar theory? It has something... There we go. Is that something even beginners should learn, or should it be put off until one knows basic guitar playing? Great question, Shulamit. So I think the general answer to this is, yes, guitar theory is helpful. And there are things about guitar theory that would be helpful to know early on, but there are other things that probably you wouldn't want to spend too much time and energy on. In the earlier stages, it does help to at least understand the basics of the cage system, but not necessarily be competent with it all up and down the neck. Just understand the basic concept and how these chords will be used. It's kind of motivational. Another thing that's really helpful is just to understand the names of the notes on the low strings, because they very quickly become useful with playing like bar chords in naming the chords. They also is a good foundation for when you're going to start learning the note names all up and down the neck. Having comfort with the two bass strings, the low E first and then the A string, knowing the names of the notes up and down helps you understand the basics of how the musical alphabet works. It helps you as a foundation for going across the neck and learning the notes. So that part you don't have to deal with. You just go from there when you start learning more. And there are other little things like that. I think it's helpful to understand the basics of reading tablature and understand the basics of rhythm with standard notation, because tablature doesn't really give you rhythm. And just understanding that, not being fluent with it and being able to sight read music, just understanding how it works. And that's something you could get very quickly and easily. Now, the mistake I see a lot of adults make is, on one hand, saying, no, we don't need theory, just play. I think that's a waste. I think it's a wasted opportunity. But I also see the other side. As adults, we tend to like to think things out with our brain. And I see a lot of adults get caught up in the theory thinking side of things instead of applying it and practicing it and making it useful. I was one of them. Well, partly because of the university system. When I enrolled in university, I enrolled in theory classes and, really got kind of caught up in the theory. And it stunted my playing for a while, I would say. It got to be where I had to kind of like try to think out everything, and it didn't sound like music anymore. I even had a very respected trumpet player come see me perform one time, and he said, "Your playing's interesting, but it doesn't sound musical. It sounds like you're trying to play from a theoretical approach." And he was right. When I got out of college, I made a concerted effort to kind of let the theory go, really feel and hear and play and make music that touched the soul as opposed to sounded correct theoretically. And then I could kind of see how the two work together over time without focusing just on theory. So there's a balanced approach. Yes, theory, but first, listening, playing what sounds good, and then at a second level, playing what really strikes an emotional chord. And that takes some work. That takes some practice. But start with just what sounds good to you. Make that a priority. My approach. I'm perfectly open to different opinions on that. I do get that some people think theory is by far the most important thing. And I've had other people say, yeah, don't bother. It just clutters things up. It looks like I don't see the word question anymore. I do see somebody is asking. I think this is a question. Let me make sure I'm not missing it. Tips on bar chords, which I did. So at the beginning of this, you can watch the. I'm going to do a recording of this, and I'll put it on the replay. It'll be out on Monday, Tuesday. And then creating rhythm while strumming. Kermani, hey, welcome. Could you clarify a little what you mean by creating rhythm while strumming? Rhythm's very important. I agree with that. I often wish that I had taken some drum lessons early on. I don't think I want to make time for that now with all the stuff I'm working on, but I think rhythm is so important. But rhythm, and particularly with strumming, is critical. And if you're just starting out, I would just practice simple strums and try to stay in rhythm, practice with a metronome. If you want to clarify, maybe I could answer in more detail. Okay. I don't see any more questions. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to plan on closing up. If you have any quick questions, I'll take a quick look before I close up for today. I cannot do a drawing today. I normally do a drawing, but I cannot because the lesson's extended beyond today, and you couldn't possibly have completed the lessons till next week. So I'm going to add this drawing into next month. So we'll do 2 drawings next month. Thank you all for joining me. It's been a pleasure. Great questions, and I will post this as a recording with a timestamp so you can look to see the questions that we talked about right on the recording. Any last-minute questions? No. Some comments, though. Thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you the first Thursday of every month. We'll be back next month at the first Thursday. I'd love to see you again. Bye for now.